Hare Krishna, everyone. Happy Ekadashi. Here I am in New York City. From Mayapur to New York. New York is very special to me, very special to all of us, because this is where Srila Prabhupada began our movement in the West. And so I'm here to do some service and to take advantage of the association of the devotees and Radha Govinda. And today we're continuing our exploration of the 26 qualities of a devotee seen through the life and the memories of Srila Prabhupada from his disciples, provided by my dear friend Siddhanta Prabhu. So, and we are going to be exploring the quality of a devotee who is without possessions. So Siddhanta, please tell us more about this quality.
Well, we know, I mean, Prabhupada from the very beginning coming to America exhibited that quality. Need we say any more? You know, came with 40 rupees or equivalent of maybe $7 in his pocket. Yeah. I don't know, did he know anyone? He didn't have a car. He didn't have a place to stay. So, I mean, how more without possessions can you get than that? So exactly, that's the lead example of Prabhupada without possessions. But today we're going to focus on 7 devotees who have other stories that do manifest the quality that Prabhupada had without possessions, that he was totally absorbed in Krishna and Krishna consciousness, that he was not after. And that's one of the things that attracted me and a lot of other devotees, I'm sure too, that Prabhupada was not here to exploit us. Yeah. He did not need or want any material things from us. He just wanted to give us Krishna. So right there is the supreme benefit of having a Vaishnava, a pure devotee in our midst, and to be our teacher for us who were with Prabhupada on the planet at that time, but also others in second, third, and generations to come that can understand this purity, and it comes or exhibited by one who does not have any need for possessions.
That's right. So
the 7 devotees that we're going to hear from today are Jananivas, Sri Bhuvanath, Parameshwari, Ranadir, Radha Damodar, Badri Narayan before he took sannyas, and Burijan, who we've heard, I think, once before. But these are great stories. And we might as well just get right into it and then talk about it on the other side and see if we're inspired or learn anything from their stories.
Good.
So without further ado, let's hear from Jananivas.
So Prabhupada was completely unfazed in Mayapur. There was no running water, there was no electricity or anything. He had a jute stick toilet, you know, a hole in the ground with some jute sticks around it. But still he followed exactly the same schedule. He couldn't use his dictaphone machine because there's no electricity. So he had his typewriter under his mosquito net on his bed, and he would type out with his 2 fingers. The purpose was unfazed. He got up at the same time, he went out for morning walk, come back and greet the deities. Even though there's no facility, it didn't faze him. He was just, his old schedule he kept maintained perfectly.
What I'm understanding there is that Srila Prabhupada exemplified this yukta vairagya, that whatever was provided he used for Krishna's service and maintained this relationship of detachment where he just was focused on his service, not attached to the facilities and the arrangements and so on. What was there, he used it.
Yeah, totally unfazed. Unlike myself when I go to India. And
yes.
Why isn't the fan working?
Right.
Or whatever, you know. But
He would just make it whatever was available. I mean, there's so many wonderful stories like that. No, the horn doesn't work. We use a plate and a spoon. That story from Shama.
Right. So, yeah, that's a good lead into this session. Understanding that Prabhupada was not fazed by material difficulties and not hankering for them. He was good without possessions and just served Krishna whatever he had to do so. Next, we're going to hear from Tribhuvanath Prabhu, who is going to tell us about a morning walk and a life lesson associated on that morning walk. So now let's hear from Tribhuvanath.
Okay.
In St. James's Park, Prabhupada would constantly be pointing out things, different things. I mean, there was one time we were in a park, and there was that story, which I remember, but there was some bird droppings, and Prabhupada was asking, he was saying, what is this? And everyone was kind of looking at the bird droppings and thinking, well, they were kind of thinking, well, maybe Prabhupada means some tea leaf formations, like we could esoterically look at it. And Prabhupada said, what does this tell you? And everyone was kind of bewildered. And then Prabhupada said, this tells you that the same bird is sleeping on the same branch every night. So Prabhupada said, even the bird becomes attached to his apartment. So Prabhupada said, so be careful.
The contradiction, the comparison, the attachment of the various jivas in whatever body they are in to their place. But Srila Prabhupada was the opposite.
Yeah, and just a very visual lesson that we can try to remember that this is not our home. What to speak of the house, but the material world is not our real home.
The whole world, yeah.
So not to
reminds me
dwell
of
too much on it.
Srila Prabhupada, how he could be at home, but he was always concerned that he was with the devotees. Like, that story where he came to Boston and they had arranged some sort of a hotel room or something. He said, no, I'm staying here with the devotees. That was his attachment, to be with devotees.
The next devotee we're going to hear from is Parameshwari Prabhu.
Parameshwari.
Yeah, I interviewed him up in Oregon good 10, 12 years ago, probably. But very nice devotee, Prabhupada man, and has an interesting story, personal story, in relationship to our possessions.
Okay.
So let's hear from Parameshwari Prabhu.
Brahmananda had gone back to India for a program, and during that time, somehow or another, Prabhanu was there, and we had been collecting a lot, and I got to pay for the whole temple with our collections, and Prabhupada had written me a letter saying that he had always wanted the temple to be paid for, and that I had done that in Brahmananda's absence, and he was very grateful for that, and that this preaching work to the African devotees is the most important preaching in the world, and we must continue to do this. So having gone to Africa after receiving that garland and blessing from Prabhupada and just the personal contact, I was probably as fired up in my own personal preaching as I had ever been, because and everything was falling into place. I was extremely successful in dealing with Indians, and it was just very inspired. So for a great length of time, that enthusiasm was there, but gradually it did wane, and I had my difficulties in Africa. And one of them was that I had misappropriated some funds and bought this Rolex watch. And I actually bought it for myself. It was one with a striped gold string down it with a gold around it. Anyhow, so I go to India, and I'm feeling really mortified that I've done this. I'm a brahmachari, and watches were kind of like the thing that you could be attached to or something. It was, even though it's bogus, still everybody had watches. So anyhow, I on my going back to India, I've decided I want to give this to Srila Prabhupada. So when I get to Bombay, I remember Prabhupada was walking with a group of devotees, and I walk up and pay my obeisances, and Prabhupada folds his hands and says hello to me, with pranams, and I'm just overwhelmed that he's even noticing me or remembers me, in any way, that his intimate way of dealing with people again. So Shruti Kirti makes an arrangement for me to come up and see Srila Prabhupada, and it's just myself, Shruti Kirti and Paramahamsa, and sitting at a table just 2 feet away from Srila Prabhupada, and he's sitting across from me. And I give him the Rolex watch, and he goes, "Oh, Rolex. And he puts it on, and he has another watch on, so he has both watches on at that point. And he's looking, and he looks at me, and he begins lecturing on the purity of Lord Chaitanya's movement, how that we are only different from others because we are following purely these principles that Lord Chaitanya has presented, and that will be the success of our movement, is that if we follow everything purely. And he went on for maybe 20 minutes, a half hour, personally lecturing me on the purity of Lord Chaitanya's movement and how it was important not to spend a farthing of Krishna's money on sense gratification. And I felt from the very beginning he had seen all the way through me and knew that I had got this for myself, and this was my act of patrician redemption, giving it to him. But he was just extremely gracious and warm and strict all at the same time, and Shruti Kirti and Paramahamsa were more or less amazed at the talk too. It was just, that he had taken so much time, and so I got to pay my obeisances and leave. And I think that was pretty much the last time I really had personal contact with Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Watches, Srila Prabhupada and watches. I think, if we go back through the memories, I remember a number of watch things where Prabhupada receives a watch and then gives it away. He receives things because dadati pratigrinati, he's exchanging love, but he's not attached. It's not, and then he'll give it away.
Right. I have another story coming up later on that also describes exactly that pastime there. Not a watch, but another article.
Something,
but,
yes.
but it's the same principle of accepting and then giving it away. The next devotee that we're going to hear from is Ranadir, who is going to tell us about a time where he offered something to Prabhupada. And it's a very loving exchange. So we'll hear from Ranadir Prabhu now and discuss on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember that the first real intimate exchange I had with Srila Prabhupada, and pretty much the last one was when my mom sent me a sweater. My mother lives in England, and she sent me this really nice wool sweater. And New Vrindavan was a mud hole. It was, just really dirty, and, it was really hard to keep anything clean. So I looked at this beautiful sweater, and it was like kind of saffron in color. And I said, well, I can't wear this, it's going to be trash in no time. I'll give it to Srila Prabhupada, and so somehow I preserved it in the brahmachari ashram in a plastic bag, kept it from getting dirty for probably a couple of months. And I was always thinking, I can't wait to give this to Srila Prabhupada. And so then Prabhupada came to Boston when they first opened the printing press there. And it was a big occasion, and devotees from a lot of different cities went there, and we got in our panel truck and drove up, everybody from New Vrindavan. And so I'm clutching my sweater and, really looking forward to it. And so we get there, and I'm trying to figure out, well, how do I do this? I'm not one of the high muckety mucks, and they're all, going to be with Prabhupada. And so one evening after Artik, everybody was gathered for darshan, and they had created with a backdrop a separate room behind the temple. And that's where Prabhupada gave darshan. And so I just kind of said, okay, it's now or never, and burst in the middle of all this. And everybody kind of looked, who's this? What's he doing here? And I just sort of stammered, for Prabhupada, I have this sweater my mother gave me, and I want you to have it. And Prabhupada said, oh, no, I can't take it. And he says, your mother gave this to you, you take it, I can't take this. And Prabhupada saw the look on my face. I was crushed, I was just devastated. Oh, God. And so he saw that, and then he says, well, I think I said, oh, but Prabhupada, please, I was begging for my life here. And he was very kind, and he said, all right, well, then we'll exchange. And so he started, he had a sweater with these buttons on it, these big oak buttons. It was really a beautiful sweater. And he started unbuttoning it. It was a cardigan, and he took it off, and I was crying, and the devotees in the room were crying. It was, just like an example of loving exchange, and that, I don't know, it just bonded me so closely to Srila Prabhupada, and of course I'll never forget that. And it kept me going for a lot of years.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. So many lessons there. Srila Prabhupada's feeling for relationships and the importance of one's mother relationship and honoring mother, and then the exchange principle of exchanging with love. And I saw everything in that way. How can this be? How can anything in the world be used to enhance our love and for each other, and even for our mothers?
Right, and it all stems from initially from Prabhupada not desiring of his mother possession.
He's not attached to any of these things. He just sees them as ways to engage, either in his service or in service to others.
Right.
Beautiful.
Now let's go to one other story that is similar in nature, presented by Radha Damodar. And let's listen to his presentation of the notion of exchanging.
Well, in 1977, I went to India, and we went to Mayapur first, and Srila Prabhupada was there in Mayapur. He became ill, and I saw him brought in they were carrying him down the stairs in a chair. He has sunglasses and things. I had given Prabhupada a nice picture of Lord Katamshi at that time, an 8x10, and another Maharaji had given Srila Prabhupada a knitted chadar she made. And Srila Prabhupada, he took it, but he immediately gave it to someone else. And the mother went over to Brahmananda Swami and expressed that she was very upset by that because she wanted Prabhupada to have it. And Brahmananda said that You gave it, that's enough. Should have probably accepted it. Now it's his to do what he likes with it. And he often gives things away that he receives because he only keeps what he needs.
Yeah, he does. His mood is to receive gifts. I've learned that myself, because there's another quality there that he will never refuse to accept. Even if he doesn't need it or think, he'll still accept it because he wants to accept the gift. He wants to exchange. He wants to have that relationship. He wouldn't say, oh, so-and-so, dasi, it's okay. I don't really need that.
Right.
You can keep it. He would accept everything, all the gifts that we get. We would, even things that were not even very useful to anyone.
Now let's hear from Badri Narayan Swami, but at this time you'll recognize him because he looks very youthful in this particular interview, which I recorded probably 25 years ago. But another example of our attachments and what's necessary for our spiritual life. So let's hear from Badri Narayan.
There was another time, I didn't personally experience this, but Karunda told me the story because he would come back every morning from the walks. Prabhupada was walking in LA, in Cheviot Hills, and there was these big houses, and they walked past one house, big house. Prabhupada said, someday we'll have a big house like this for Krishna. The devotee said, Jai Prabhupada. So then Prabhupada walked a little further, and there was a big circular driveway and a big car, big, stretched limo or something. Prabhupada said, someday we'll have a big car like this for Krishna. The devotee said, Jai Prabhupada. So they walked to another house a little further, and out of nowhere this dog came running down the driveway and stopped. And Prabhupada said, someday we'll have a big dog like that for Krishna. The devotee said, Jai Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, you fools, what do you want a big dog for? So not like a parrot, the devotees see in their innocence,
Oh, Prabhupada's sense of humor.
Yeah, he caught him.
He got him.
What was really important for spiritual life was not a dog, but again, the big house was good for Krishna because it's for Krishna. Big house for Krishna, but not a big dog.
That's nice.
All right, now we're going to have one last story from Burijan Prabhu and talk about that on the other side and wrap it up after that. But a very interesting, probably a new story for a lot of devotees that have not heard this particular situation that Prabhupada was in, and gave us another learning lesson.
In 1974, when Prabhupada was staying in the Hong Kong Hilton, in the same suite where the Shah of Iran had stayed. One thing is he appreciated that we got him that. He told Satsut Maharaj, and Satsut Maharaj, who was his secretary, passed it on to me, that in Prabhupada's indirect way, he said, whoever has arranged this, it is a great credit for him. So in this Hong Kong Hilton, and it was also very interesting that the rooms were so big and opulent, and in Prabhupada's sleeping room there was a bed, and he asked me to come in and make the bed for him before he was going to take rest, and he was so little compared to this big bed. It seemed so funny in one sense, but he just accepted it, and we held a press conference for Prabhupada, and at that time Guru Maharajji was quite prominent, and he had quite a following in Hong Kong, as well as obviously in the United States and Europe. So the reporters, and many reporters came. It was quite full, and they asked him questions. The first question they asked him was, "You preach against materialism and just the acquirement of wealth, etc. But here you are living in this very posh penthouse where the Shah of Iran," they didn't say that, and he was. It was the best place in the Hong Kong Hilton, and he, why are you doing this? He was trying to point out the hypocrisy that there was hypocrisy in Prabhupada was doing. And Prabhupada was his consciousness was so clear. There wasn't any fog at all in Prabhupada's consciousness, and he was never intimidated by any kind of question, direct or whatever, trying to catch him. So he said, as far as I'm concerned, first Prabhupada started explaining philosophically that everything belongs to Krishna, and therefore renunciation means to use everything in Krishna's service. So you can imagine the reporter being completely blank when that one was presented to him. And then Prabhupada decided on a different tack to explain it to him. And he said, for me, as far as I'm concerned, I can live under a tree. And practically speaking, Prabhupada did that in 1977. When he was living in Bhubaneswar, he was bathing with out of a well in the mornings in the Kumbh Melas. He didn't have that kind of attachment to opulence. But as far as I'm concerned, Prabhupada said, I could live under a tree. But if I was living under a tree and invited you all to a press conference, would you have come? Complete silence. The point was made, and it was obvious, and it was obvious to them too. So it was such a wonderful answer. Who could have thought of such an answer like that?
That is so nice. That really is a great conclusion to this.
Yes,
I think that is the final one, isn't it?
it is.
For today, and it really combines all the different aspects of Srila Prabhupada's detachment, Srila Prabhupada's using everything in Krishna's service, and this principle that in so many, like the Bhajan Kutir in Mayapur said, we're happy living here, but then who would come?
Right. Brilliant answer, as always. Yeah. So anyway, I want to thank everybody for listening and watching, and stay tuned. Next Ekadashi, we'll focus on the feature where the Vaishnav works for everyone's benefit. So that's what we have to look forward to.
Yes, and are receiving already. So thank you so much. Thank you, and thank you to our audience for joining us today. We hope you have a wonderful Ekadashi. And we look forward to being with you next Ekadashi. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Siddhanta.
Haribol.
All of your service.
Hare
Haribol.
Krishna.
Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.